Hi, my name's Dee, your Professor of Woo Woo, and welcome to Sunchild Tarot. And I have with me, as ever, astrologer. There you are, David. You are astrology incarnate. Astrologer
I
David
am.
Fischer. How are you doing?
An appearance that speaks. Hi, Darren. I'm okay. How are you? Glad to be here, as always.
As you can tell, I'm on one. It's ridiculously hot here, and if I don't keep talking, I will just melt. So, before, on the note of keeping talking, just before we actually start looking at this month's full moon, I just want to make a bit of an announcement. There's not going to be many videos this month. There's, you'll be lucky if you get a late new moon reading out, full moon reading out of me, to be quite honest. So we're going to go a bit more in depth today. And basically, my day job has taken over for the next 4 months, so I'm not going to really have the opportunity to do, there's no full moon readings, there's unlikely to be new moon readings, and there's unlikely to be any monthlies, but September, or well, back end of August, September, looks like service as normal will be resumed. So the second thing, when I rewatched our video, David, I thought we was maybe, no, we weren't, but we seemed a little harsh or negative about the way we interpreted the last new moon. I watched a lot of, in fact, every single one I could find, astrologer videos about the new moon, and there was all different levels of interpreting the new moon. It was nice to see that Coyote Star Astrology was just as negative about it as we were, going, oh God, not looking forward to this. And in today's full moon video released by Anastasia Cosmic Astrologer, she echoed pretty much the same sort of sentiments. There's so many ways that we can interpret all of these symbols, and the fact that there's so many ways that they can apply correctly, no matter what interpretation that you're looking at, it's going to hit for somebody. I would like to say that, well, these shows, we can't go for every single meaning, can we?
Yeah, no, I mean, as an astrologer, you're definitely going to get, oh, but I saw this differently with another astrologer, or I saw this differently in another person's channel, and you are going to get that. As long as you're not getting anyone saying something absurd, such as, you know, Saturn in Aquarius represents sunshines and daisies, people are going to have different experiences, and they're going to access the different planetary, sorry about that, they're going to express the different planetary energies in different ways, and they are going to therefore be able to give different perspectives to the, you know, to the planetary placements.
Yeah, I think it's actually quite a good idea to watch. I mean, if you're of a habit of watching new moon and full moon astrology videos, watch as many as you can and find out what language is working for you, what astrologers. It's the same as how you would interact with a tarot reader. Certain people will be on your vibe, and other people, I'm not saying they're not on your vibe, it's just, it's almost like that square energy. The way that they are looking things or are framing at things is sort of contrary to the way that you would look at things.
Yeah, and just to make it
switches
between, switches, yeah.
You know, what one day I may find that this astrologer is really, it turns out they were spot on for me, but the following month it's a completely different set of astrologers that were spot on.
Yeah, actually, you have to realize that your chart is going to respond to these energies in different ways. And your chart is going to have these transits affecting different houses with different importance levels for you in your current scenario. So if one astrologer is focusing on the fact that you're having a malefic opposition, for example, happening in the fixed signs that's enclosing Venus, that particular astrologer might be focusing on a part of your chart that's not that active. And although it could be bringing you some hardship, it's not going to be the primary thing you're feeling right now. You're probably going to be feeling the other houses that are more active, that have the more beneficial aspects of the new moon going on, and therefore some other astrologer that's covering more of that aspect of the new moon is going to resonate more to what's manifesting in your reality around you. So that's the more practical way to look at it, in my opinion.
So in a way, I suppose you're saying, I hadn't thought about this, is, I mean, Anne Ortley in Astrology Hub has been talking about choosing your salad. And like, we've all got the same ingredients, but the proportions you put them together, the spices you add, the oils that you add, that's up to you. But in a way, the whole field of astrology is like one of those buffet bars where you eat all you can. You know, you go down the row and you pick the foods that are appropriate to you. You know,
Exactly.
I stay away from peanuts if you're allergic.
A chart has infinite potential for informing an astrologer of a person's life in any way, any through any perspective they want to look at it. So if you're asking about relationships, and the astrologer is going to look at the same chart, he's going to look as if you were talking about career, and it gives you a different amount of detail about these different areas of your life in different ways, the same chart. So that's why you're going to get different interpretations from different astrologers. And yes, I know that most astrologers were choosing to focus on the beneficence of the Jupiter trine to the new moon and the aversion to the malefics. But I chose to focus on the fact that, for example, in the past new moon, that we were having one of the benefics enclosed by a malefic opposition in a sign that was responding to the sun in Cancer, receiving the conjunction of the moon. So it was directly tied to the whole dynamic, even if you might have felt it through the better perspective. And it's going to tie to what's going to happen in this full moon that we are going to have to talk about in a moment.
Which we will in a moment, because after all, we are here to depress you. But
yeah.
I just want to talk a little more about the new moon, because I focus very much with the asteroids and what have you, and the parallels and counter parallels, and the relationship Juno on the south node and Saturn with Hera, opposition Hera, as I recall. There was that relationship issue. Now, I did see that manifest in my life, because of course I did, as in issues that would come up to test the relationships that were there, and touch wood, nothing broke. All that happened is that the relationships, the bonds that I have, and I'm not talking romantic, I'm talking friendships, familial, and what have you, they ended up getting stronger due to the pressure that had been exerted on them. How was the new moon for you? Well, how's the new moon for you so far? Because I mean, really, there's another 2 weeks left of it, isn't there?
Yeah, no, actually, we are talking today about the full moon in Aquarius that's going to happen, and the new moon. That's what happened 2 weeks ago. There's still 2 weeks to come of this cycle, but there's a new step coming up with this new lunation. That's the full moon that adds to everything that's been happening since the new moon. Now, the new moon in Cancer for me has been a little wacky. I've had some very good things happening to me and to people around me, financially wise, and financially, and I also had people around me reaching new heights in their own professions, in their own personal, projects. However, there's always this feeling of pressure because of everything that's been going on around it. There are these relationship issues within these victories that don't seem to allow it to be as sweet as they want to taste, and that seem to still tickle us in the back of our heads. And it's like, we want to enjoy this, but there is this element of pressure around everything that doesn't allow us to fully enjoy it. And that actually adds to the pressure onto Venus, even if you don't want to notice it. And that's the danger of it being connected to Saturn, everything being connected to Saturn the way it has been. We aren't noticing, and people aren't noticing when they're willing to focus on only the good details of these lunations, because they're not willing to focus on the larger picture that we've all been facing for the past year and a half. Things are not supposed to be as rosy as we are trying to make them seem, even with the vaccination vaccinations, for example, spreading out the way they are right now, you're being able to reach more people with these programs, but still very much behind what it should be for the level of relaxation that we're seeing in many countries. And I'm not just talking about the UK, for those of you who are there. I'm talking also about in my country, we're not even halfway through the vaccination program, and people are already treating the pandemic as if it were a controlled thing. And it's not, it's completely out of control still. And that will take its toll. You cannot ignore these things, and Saturn is still very much going to bring about this reality that you can't ignore the things that are uncomfortable for you and things that are worrying you in the back of your head while you try to focus on the things that are working out. Those things that are working out depend on you not trying to ignore the things that haven't been working so far.
Now, some of those themes are ones that I've picked out of this full moon as well. So that's really interesting that you say that. But I want to focus on the one phrase that you just said, larger picture, because there's also another lunar cycle that this is related to, because as we are all aware, we entered the age of Aquarius with the last new moon in Aquarius and the stellium there, didn't we, folks?
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah. If you watch this channel for a while, you know very well my opinion on that. But nevertheless, it was a very, very powerful new moon with a stellium of planets in Aquarius. How is this full moon likely to be relating to back then? Is this the culmination to a certain extent of all of those strong Aquarian energies that were present there? I mean, does that mean that the age of Aquarius started in February and is finishing next week?
No, I actually do tie back very practically to things like the British denial that the pandemic is still pretty much, outside of, everyone's control in a way. For example, opening up for no masks, that's something that shouldn't happen right now, according to most, health authorities. And I'm just saying this here because you might consider this my opinion. You might not want to agree with it. That's fine. But there are things that are, clearly being shared with the public in a way that is not quite as it seems. So back to that new moon in February, we saw the start of this whole vaccination campaign in the more developed countries taking hold in a more robust way. We saw more people being vaccinated. That whole 100 million people in 100 days of government by Biden in the US, for example, all those things started back then to be implemented effectively. And there was a lot of hope for the future, for the things that were to come, that they would be much better than in 2020. And now we saw, after all of this that we've been through this year, we are now seeing that they are following through with their agenda that they proposed back then, no matter how high the costs.
Yes.
And that's what we are seeing manifest now. And what it should be rising up as a questioning for people in general is not how long is it going to take for things to go back to normal, but why are we trying to sell a normalcy of a situation that's not normal and that's not going to be able to return to a normal that we knew as normal back then, because it was not normal? When are we going to start denying that this situation actually brought up many more social issues that were just lying underneath the surface than we are capable of dealing with at the moment? When are we going to look at that as it is?
And that's personally what I think Freedom Day has all been about. The government had a plan that they said it would work, and they stuck to the plan, and now the plan is finishing and they're telling everybody it's worked. Infection rates here are soaring. I've noticed many people mention Britain as look, they've lifted all restrictions, they can be free. No, it's not like that.
No, definitely not.
That.
We saw Israel
saying we were going to sort the problem, we're going to sort it this way, we did what we said we're going to do. Oh, look, the problem's sorted, but it's not.
It's a lie. No, you see, nations like Israel, one of the propaganda nations for the vaccination campaigns, they had to bring up some restrictions back in the past few weeks. If you've been following the news, they had to, even though their country was one of the first countries to reach a sustainable, quote unquote, level of vaccination according to the plan that was established in the beginning of the year. They still had to bring up some restrictions back. Not all of them, but they had to, because the infection rates were still spreading much quicker than they had anticipated. And those kinds of managing things are still necessary, and they're not being done properly. They haven't been done properly since the beginning of this whole program, and they are trying to, as G said, sweep it under the rug that they haven't done it the way they should have done it. They're just doing what they said they would do, which is not proper enough.
They are embodying Saturn, as like we were discussing earlier, but we have Uranus introducing more and more variants, the latest variant being the Delta variant, or as it's being called here, the Johnson variant.
It's amazing that you mentioned that, the variant problem with the whole thing, because we became much more aware of these variants back in that new moon, right? Yeah. And back then, these new variants were still a mystery. We didn't know if the vaccines would be effective on them. We had just been out of that pressure. We had the vaccines and we said, okay, we have some hope for the future. Oh no, there's variants. And Uranus keeps bringing them up. This is interesting, an interesting way that the dynamic between Saturn and Uranus has manifested.
Right, so that's really, shall we crack on with this full moon then?
Yeah, let me share the screen.
Right, I'll let you have the stage first.
Yeah, here you go. So this is from my location, so it's not really important, the ascendant at the time for where you're standing on Earth. But we are going to talk about the disposition of planets throughout the signs and how they're related to each other, and cyclically, in a cycle, how they're relating to each other. Right, first things first, you see that the new moon, the full moon, is going to happen right at the beginning of masculine signs. So you're talking about this primordial impulse that's going to be coming onto our awarenesses. We are going to be feeling the need to act against something, actively act against something in our routines. Why am I saying that? Because this lunation is happening only in contact with the malefics, and the benefics are averse to it. Mercury is also averse to it, only in contact by sign with these benefics. So what's happening here is we are not being able to assess the good of some situations, and that's just the general feeling. There's nothing I can do about it. That's just the luminaries with the malefics as companions. And as we said before, the government, which is in its own power here in Leo, is pushing on an agenda. And much like that, we are going to be trying to use the validations for our own perspectives around us to push our own agendas, no matter how high the cost, the personal cost for us. We are going to be feeling that urge to do that. But at the same time, we have Saturn here with this moon in Aquarius that is telling us, well, you might be feeling that you're entitled to acting out your perception of the world and how hurt you are by everything that's going on around you. But is that the most effective course of action to change your current reality? It's at some point, you have to see where it stops being about resolving issues, resolving the problem, looking into what really matters and what's being risen by the situation, what's being brought by the situation. And it starts being about reinforcing your own ideals because letting them go would be too painful. You see?
Yes.
So we are going to have a full moon in Aquarius that's going to be much better than this one by the end of the cycle. It's going to be at 29 degrees of these signs.
Of course, this is only one of two.
One or two. So this comes with, this is a set. So this is only the beginning of a process of actually integrating the whole shift that was being described by the past two lunations. So you've been following Darren and I, in these videos, talking about how these past full moons and new moons have been very destabilizing. they have brought to our awareness many things that were hidden underneath the surface, and we have been able to look at them in the face and name them as they are. But have we really taken the best course of action? The past 2 lunations, we have said to ourselves, this is how I'm going to go on about it, and this is what should happen around it. And we've had some level of validation because we see that we are trying to improve our situation more and more. And so we see some feedback, some positive feedback. But there is still an area of our lives that throughout these past lunations have bothered us with this Mars in Leo transit opposing Saturn for the past month and a half. We have been feeling this urge to defend, this urge to go against, this urge to stand our ground relating to what we believe in. And we haven't seen how that's just us trying to keep up a narrative that was old, that's not serving us anymore. You have your way, you should have a way to manifest your dissatisfaction, to manifest how unsatisfied you are with your current narrative. But maybe you've been barking up the wrong tree. You see what I mean? Maybe you're trying to resolve an issue that has no resolution because it's not supposed to be resolved by you. It's just meant to be let go of. You see, this is what this particular full moon brings about. The next one is going to be much more idealistic, and again, we're going to recover much more of that hopeful side of Leo. But this one,
going to be optimistic.
That next one, yeah, the next full moon in Aquarius is going to be much better than this one. It's going to be conjoined Jupiter. It's going to be applying to Jupiter. So it's going to be a much more realistic tone to our expectations, and they're going to be therefore much more satisfactory because we're going to be seeing practical results, not just hopeful action, you know, not just wishful thinking based action as we were until this point. Now reality is clearly disposed to anyone who wants to see it.
Before you go any further with that, then, there's 2 things I want to bring up. One, a lot of what you are talking about that urge to stand up and that urge to stand up and protect, there's going to be anger around that. So that immediately makes me obviously think about Lilith. Now, Black Moon Lilith is really busy this month. Lilith, sextile the Sun, trine the Moon, square Venus, square Mars, square Jupiter, trine Pluto, parallel to the Sun, opposing as in contra-parallel to Saturn. Lilith has a lot to say, and more importantly, Lilith is giving. I'm worried about with whether we are surging forward ahead or whether we are fighting for something that's past, and I'll get onto that with the angels in a moment. But Lilith is also trying the asteroid Icarus. Only a small little asteroid. Apart from it's on the point of the Great Conjunction. It's on that 0 degrees Aquarius. And Icarus itself has quite a lot to say in this chart. It's septile Neptune, quintile the Chiron. We'll get onto that later. But there's that your anger can try to achieve too much. Now, with that idea of anger, i.e. Mars supporting the Sun, or the various agendas, whether you look at it as the agenda of the state versus the individual, or the agenda of we want our normal back, we want things back the old way, there is an angelic relationship between the luminaries and the nodes. The luminaries are sextile and trine each of the nodes. So I'm going to focus on North Node trine Moon and South Node trine Sun. Now it's a 7 degree orb, it's not a big orb, but what's really interesting about these is that they both have the same angelic rulers. Where's my notes here? So North Node and the Moon, so the people and the hunger to move forward, is being ruled by Mebahel, North Node by arc and Moon by degree. Now, Mebahel represents a farewell to arms, if only, but more importantly, truth, liberty, justice, you know, dealing with all these situations that the pandemic has revealed, the inequalities, all of this. However, the Sun and the South Node are ruled by the angel Daniel. Now, the Sun can obviously represent rulers, you know, God, King, Emperor, or what have you. The South Node just as much can represent the past and keep consciousness. If you look at the Sun's consciousness, it's being focused on the way that things were, being ruled by an angel whose one of the mottos is enough is never enough. And that immediately brings to mind, to me, the idea of the institutions, whether it's your government, your corporations, your royal families, your politicians, whatever. They're digging their heels in and they say, we want it like it used to be and not just like it used to be because we want more.
Yeah,
that's my rant.
And no, yeah, and I love that, because really what you're being asked here with Moon and Saturn being in such close conjunction, because the Moon has an application range of at least 13 degrees, and by being 9 degrees away from Saturn, it's a close enough application that Saturn would be a very strong influence in this lunation. And Saturn is about things that we don't want to look at, things that the institutions of power that are represented by Saturn generally ignore, and they are generally accused of neglecting. And this is what Saturn represents in general terms. If the full moon is happening here and has that angelic influence of one angel telling you enough is never enough, with the sun just highlighting that hot and dry energy of trying to force your agenda onward, right? No matter what the cost is, because Saturn is telling you, okay, there are these structures that are opposing your goals, that are opposing and bringing you the awareness of things that you don't like to look at, opposing your ideals. What are you going to do about it? Now, if you choose to neglect it, that's when Saturn becomes malefic. If you choose to not, if you choose to not look at it, that's when Saturn eats its children, you see. But if you look at it appropriately, then you become much more aware of the reality behind your ideals. You become aware of your own shadow. You become aware of the things that you are not, that are maybe telling you, this is not possible to be done this way. Stop, turn around. You're ignoring that. And once you're made aware of that, you have two choices. Either incorporate that and tell yourself, I have to change, and practically change your course, change your direction, change your routine, your rituals, everything you do in your daily life and the way you do it. Or you just tell yourself, well, this seems too hard for me to cope with. This seems too hard for me to change. So either I accept and give up and change my course, or I just keep going and telling myself that this is not, just denial, basically, and telling yourself that that's the way things should go. And if you are to die trying, then so be it. That's not the intention here. You shouldn't die trying. That's, you know.
But it's really hard to even ask those questions at the moment.
Yeah.
Whether you look by traditional or modern rulerships, Neptune is really strong at the minute. You can either consider it being ruled by Jupiter that is dignified in its own sign, although retrograde, or you can say that it's dignified in and of its own right. But interestingly, it is also in a direct opposition to the degree with the asteroid Apollo. Now, there's two levels to this, because if I remember correctly, I read an article that was saying the asteroid Apollo is considered about a point of obsession that you have in your life. But to me, Apollo has a very special, I mean, I have right here, I will always pay attention to the position of Apollo. But whether you're looking at it as a point of obsession or whether you're looking at it as the god of healing and truth and light, it is opposing Neptune. It is, dreams can be supporting that obsession or smashing that obsession, but either way, pretty dramatic. And dreams are opposing the ideas of truth, the ideas of, you know, what Mebahel is trying to bring, truth, liberty, and justice, to ask those questions where Saturn is saying, have you looked at this? Look, it's not going to work. Mm-hmm. Neptune is really encouraging you with its relationship with Apollo or its own relationship with Jupiter or what have you, to just go, la, 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 not listening. I'm going to stick to my plan. I've done my plan. I am halfway, 3/4 away, 80% way through my plan. Since I am this far through my plan, it obviously means my plan is working.
Yeah, but the thing is, you're not that far ahead in your plan as you think. That would be the catch, because you see, Neptune is also standing in the terms of Mars, in the bounds of Mars. That's not something you can see here because I didn't input that style of wheel. But that means that Mars, the one who's also trying to push the agenda of the Sun, that's why I mentioned the hot and dry qualities, because the Sun is being exacerbated by Mars right now, trying to validate its own agenda. So if you're feeling yourself much more forceful every time you have to impose some boundary to someone, well, maybe that relationship should be revised. Maybe the terms in that relationship are long due for a revision. Or maybe you should drop it altogether, right? Because
if it's in the terms of Mars, does that not mean that Neptune, to a certain extent, is supporting that drive with?
I want to finish with that. Like you have Neptune in those terms of Mars, bringing up to you confusing narratives around what Mars is trying to do. It's confusion. Neptune is also bringing up with the Martian energy. Whenever you are activating this Martian energy, this also activates that Neptunian ideal that's being described there by Neptune transit in Pisces at that particular place in the sky. But that just means that whatever Martian relationships, whatever Martian significations you see popping up around you, fights you have with people, the will to reinforce your own points of view in a more passionate way, those things are going to be endowed with confusion. They're going to be surrounded by confusion. They're going to be brought up. And if you try to look at them as they are, you're going to see that it's almost like trying to catch smoke. You see? Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's why I'm telling you all, keep in mind what you are ignoring. I don't think it's a coincidence that I was only one of the only few astrologers that was talking about the harsh aspects of that new moon. I'm not thinking that that's a coincidence. I think people are willfully trying to be blind to the bad things that are going on and to the confusion. I do think that. And I have to mention this, I have to address this, because it's not about the astrology being wrong. It's about people focusing on areas of the chart that are good to try and bring people some hope. But, you know, even so we can have hope, we need to bring some things to our awareness that are not right now. And the sky right now is not easy going. And it's not going to be for a while still. And any astrologer that tries to deny that Jupiter and Saturn, for example, are retrograde at the same time, and that they don't do that every single time they go retrograde, you know, for example, and that's going on in their signs of domicile and around that area of the sky, with Pluto being in the mix. You know, we just had eclipses in all those areas together with them. So if people are not willing to face that we have just been through a huge collective trauma and see in fact the things that they have been ignoring about themselves, you're just bound to repeat everything that we've been doing up till now, you know?
I think we're going to see this in state narratives and media narratives as well.
Yeah.
There's an issue in the chart, certainly in terms of the asteroids and midpoints and parallels, about healing. Saturn is parallel panacea. Panacea is something that's supposed to heal you and doesn't. It just calms
Wow.
it down for a moment, but it doesn't get rid of the actual cause. Chiron is contraparallel, which is the equivalent of an opposition to Aesculapia, the son of Apollo, the god of healing, and parallel to Hygeia. There's this attention to the wound, but then there's a salve being put on it that is like Saturn saying, don't worry, this will tide you over. And because you've just got to get to wherever Saturn says you've got to get to. It'll tide you over. You'll be fine. Don't worry about the fact that you might be doing long-term damage. You'll be fine. So there's all of that. There seems to be a real dynamic around true healing and snake oil. With all this illusion that we've been talking about and this perpetuating of the old way and the wanting to return to normalcy. So whether we're talking about the state apparatus trying to make things the way they were because they were quite happy with the way they were, thank you very much, or whether it's the individual trying to return to normalcy and ignoring the fact that normalcy has disappeared, there's this healing and snake oil dynamic going along. So, I mean, my advice looking at all this is just for the moment, watch everything, observe everything, do as little as you can, apart from learning, listening, watching, because you don't want to make decisions right now. You don't even want to make decisions about your healing. I mentioned the asteroid Icarus earlier, and it's got extra whammy being on that great conjunction point. So that is trine Lilith. So it's that anger trying to achieve more than it possibly necessarily can.
Agree with that completely.
Chiron, there are creative ways to address the wounding that are, again, aiming too high or come from a point of inexperience. Sextile Neptune, there's unseen influence here. Now, actually, I'll go up on a tangent here because the unseen influence, the moon is at 1 degrees Aquarius. The Chandra symbol for that is a woman walking through the forest unaware that she has been, that she is being observed by elves. The sun is at 1 degrees Leo. The omega symbol for that is an alchemist in the forest trying to capture the spirits, which is interesting. There's that capturing image on that sun, south node, state, god, emperor, king dynamic. So it's trying to harness it, whereas the moon is la 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 la, what a lovely forest, not knowing that they're surrounded. Not that that's a bad thing, but there's that element of unseen influence and sextile Neptune, unseen influence in your dreams, in the ideals, in the, oh my God, I'm sounding like a conspiracy theorist. But, you know, there's going to be PR agendas going on. There's going to be...
I agree with that. And I think it is about being unaware. I think it's in a subconscious level, being unaware of your vulnerabilities to these energies that you're trying to harness. Because you have the sun in one point, your consciousness, the alchemist, trying to deal with these elves, these magical beings, and in a way that's favorable to him, while the moon is walking through a forest without noticing it. So it would be like, careful, leaving them in peace, yes, but she's being observed by them. So she is in a way being receptive to their energy. So it's kind of telling you, careful with the energies you're trying to associate to yourself right now, to use to your favor, because they are going to define a lot. They are going to be also looking back at you, and they're going to define a lot of how you're going to do things moving forward. If you want to keep repeating cycles, do it exactly as you.
Hello.
And so I think we should look at this full moon, trying to integrate those two perspectives. One, we are trying to use these energies But two, try to make yourself conscious of how those energies might also be looking back at you and might be also using you in a way that you're trying to ignore just because you're trying to push your own agenda forward as fast as you want it to materialize. That's actually where the gold lies, I would suppose. Looking at the things that you are trying to ignore is actually where the real purpose of this full moon lies.
Yes, because also Sun and Neptune midpoint has Ceres directly on it. So there's that idea of what illusions help construct your identity can be amplified. And just with one final reference to Icarus, we have the asteroid Proserpina, which is the Roman name for Persephone. She goes into the underworld, she comes out of the underworld. In numerous oracle card sets that I've got, she's representing the idea of transformation or transfiguration. And she is quincunx Icarus, as if to say, what on earth are you doing? What are you trying to achieve? What are you doing? And let's face it, it's Icarus, it'll fail. So we've just got to really, oh God, there's a lot of navel gazing in this moon, isn't there?
I would say yes. I would say we have to. And at this point, we are to look at these combats, these tensions, these little conflicts that are going to pop up, sometimes not so little, in our surroundings and with our families and with our friends and whatever area of your chart these planets fall into. You have to look at where Leo is standing with Mars right now. Whatever anger issues might arise, whatever angry outbursts of emotion or whatever intense outbursts of emotion trying to defend a point of view might arise, whenever those situations come up, be sure that you are facing some form of repression, that you are feeling it, but also try to understand why you're feeling it like that. Try to understand why is it so, why does it take such a reaction out of you, you know? Because the true treasure of this full moon and where it can really bring to your awareness and consciousness things that you can really work on and use to make progress on, these things are lying on the questioning of that impulsive reaction, of that impulsive acting to try and reinforce one's own point of view.
So really, I mean, that's really everything.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything else to cover.
I would just be, there's other angelic aspects that I've noted. Just for people, if you're into your angels, then Chiron is in an aspect to Lilith due to Jezebel. The moon is in an aspect to Lilith via Umabel. So again, there's all this attention on Lilith, this standing up, this, you know, that divine anger, if you want to put it that way. Mercury and Saturn through Melahel, and Uranus and Venus are having an interesting link, because Venus's degree is in is Haziel's, and Uranus is in Haziel's quinary or 5-degree arc, and obviously Venus is ruling Uranus at the moment as well. So I'm not quite sure how to interpret that yet, but it's got welly. There's my technical term. And in terms of the Goetian, the moon is aspecting Venus by the Goetic spirit Thoras, and by night it's aspecting Jupiter by Amducius. Now that leads me to think that, again, angers that are there could get amplified somewhat. But there's other gifts there. If you know how to work with Thoras or Amducius or Haziel, then this full moon might be a good time to do some meditative work, light a candle, sit and talk to them, evoke them, however you want to do that. And if you don't work with the angels or the Goetia or what have you, then just have a little read about them and think about how those themes might be playing out for you at the moment. And that might help you isolate what some of those illusions are, and might help you be aware of some of those things that you are ignoring. Because while I've been looking at these angelic aspects, and I'm assuming the Goetic, now I've started looking at them, are the same thing, they are simply highlighting a pay attention to this. Yeah, that's my speech done.
Yeah, no, I would agree with everything you just said. So yeah.
Okay, so we've heard it here. David promises the next full moon will be optimistic and cheerful. I am already put a folder on my computer saying the happy, happy, joy, joy full moon in Aquarius. Hopefully I'm not using the current aspects to oversell you at all, David.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a nice new moon. I'm not sure about that cheerful as you're trying to sell it, but you know, you're definitely going to see some cheers.
That's good news. So as ever, there is details on how to contact David for a chart reading down in the description, and your website and your Instagram. How's the website going?
Yeah, it's nice actually. It's in the first place. Astrology.com. That's my Instagram actually, in the first place astrology, because I couldn't find just the in the first place. So my website is inthefirstplace.com. That's the handle.
Right, and if you want to contact either of us for readings, the information is down below. We can get rid of the chart now. There's other than that, my apologies that there'll be a few interviews come out. I've done an interview with medium Catherine Lundeen, which will also go up just shortly after this video. And because David, you were on a podcast as well on a different episode, weren't you?
Yes, it was fun. She was fun, yeah. It was very fun to do.
And there will hopefully be more interviews come up. As for readings, your Zodiac readings, they'll be there when they get there. In the meantime, best of luck, no hasty actions. Try to pay attention to what it is that your brain could be trying to convince you to ignore. Or the newspapers, or your parents, or your job, or whatever. There is that influence there that is going, don't look at the man behind the curtain, and you need to pull back every curtain. Oh God, I'm going to burst out into Joseph in the multicolored Technicolor Dreamcoat in a minute. Right, so thank you very much. Good luck, everybody, with this interesting changing phase that we have. And thank you again, David.
See you all next time.